The opening scene shows Lindsay, a successful producer of commercials, taking her time to carefully pick out a dress, shoe, clutch, and other accessories for her outing. She rounds up with her makeup and gets on the street to get a cab. She arrives at the venue for her date with Steven, her boyfriend, and when they are done eating, Lindsay confesses that the meal is the most incredible one she has ever had. Steven interrupts her as he goes on and on about them getting to know each other better and eventually building a great marital relationship. But Lindsay doesn't want to go into that discussion. She excuses herself to use the ladies' bathroom, but ends up in the men's room talking to herself as she iterates on Steven's good characteristics, which will make him a great partner. A young man who is listening to her from one of the toilets steps out to advise her to focus on what she wants, instead of convincing herself that the guy out there is good for her. Lindsay is in shock as to how she got into the men's room instead of the ladies. She goes back to the restaurant smiling as Steven holds out her chair. He continues with his speech and then brings out a box revealing the ring in a proposal to Lindsay. She smiles sheepishly and assures him that she loves him, but she thinks it's time for them to stop seeing each other. She walks out of the restaurant instantly, leaving him in a confused state. She gets back home and her friend Monica calls her to find out how the date went. She's already excited that Lindsay must have said yes to Steven. Unfortunately, Lindsay reveals that she ended the relationship. Monica tries to advise her against her actions, but Lindsay doesn't even know what to make out of her outburst towards Steven. The following day, Lindsay chose to visit her therapist to seek help. Steven has always been great and sweet to her. She suspects the problem must be her, and not him, which is why she thinks she needs help. She confesses to the therapist that just 2 days before Steven's proposal, she had admitted to Monica that she wants to commit to him, but then she doesn't understand for her attitude. The therapist, who is supposed to help her figure out what's going on in her life, informs her that their session would have to continue in September. She needs to go on a month's break throughout August. Lindsay imagines herself angrily yelling at the therapist for abandoning her for a whole 31 days. She wonders what she'll be doing throughout that period. After leaving her therapist's office, Lindsay set off to meet with Monica in a bookstore. She narrates all that went down, and now she'll have to find a way to deal with her problem. Her friend advises her to read some books and look up Craigslist. That evening, she looks up Craigslist as directed by her friend, while trying to get at least one therapist to help her. It turns out all the therapists in New York are on a compulsory vacation for therapists. She laments about her situation as she frantically goes over the website, hoping to find someone at least. A new day comes, and Lindsay is at work with Monica. They are working along with some crew members to make a commercial. Monica is surprised that Lindsay is the only one who doesn't know that all therapists in the city must take a month off work compulsorily, according to the law binding them to do so. Lindsay picks up her phone, and she's surprised to have received over 105 emails. Later, while they are out having lunch, Lindsay shows her friend a proposal she prepared. The previous night, she came across a group of people faced with the same situation as her. So, she intends to reach out to all of them to use the 1-month absence of their therapist to bond and help each other through the duration. Monica reads out loud, but she can't help not notice the man sitting behind Lindsay. She suspects he's been eavesdropping on their conversation, so she stands up and walks over to his seat, telling him to just come sit right at their table. To their surprise, the man reveals that he wants to join Lindsay's society. Monica requests to have his card just before he walks off. The ladies stare at each other in wonder. Lindsay pleads for her friend to let her use her place, as well as assist her with the arrangement since she's more normal than she is. Monica gives in to Lindsay's request, and soon they host the first session. The turnout is quite impressive, even though they'll be hosting different people with a range of issues. Lindsay welcomes everyone, including the overly dramatic and villainy ones. While she's questioning what prompted her to start up the group therapy thing, the guy from the men's room the other day suddenly shows up behind her. He wonders why she's always talking to herself. Lindsay thinks he must be stalking her, and he goes over to introduce himself as AJ. Monica moves over to meet them, and then ushers them into the house where they will be spending some time together. While everyone is trying to settle in, Monica and Lindsay receive an uninvited guest who had mistaken their group therapy session for a party. The men bring out their guns and force Lindsay to lead the way to the others. They round everybody up and ask Lindsay to get them duct tape, while one of them collects everyone's valuables. They tape all 10 of the group therapy participants to their seats, and Ralph watches over them, while Stevie feeds on some food on the table. After collecting everything on them, the robbers pack up their loot and walk out of the house, turning off the light. Immediately after the robbers step out, they all start making attempts to untie themselves, but to no avail, and now they probably have to wait for someone to come help them. Monica informs them that Jake, her assistant, will be coming to sleep over at her place tonight, so they can readily prepare for a job the next day. But the problem is that Jake might decide to come around much later than expected. They are all feeling frustrated at the turnout of events. Lindsay suggests they might as well just have a session. After all, they all gathered because they were unhappy and they wanted to figure things out. Monica quickly informs all of them that she's just a bystander and not necessarily one of them. Louis Silverstone goes first. He works for an IT incorporation, and he lost his Rolex to the robbers Stevie and Ralph. Louis reveals that his issue is that he does substances, and he made an attempt to stop because he loves his girlfriend. He found it quite difficult to do without the illegal medicines, even though he was undergoing therapy. His therapist found out, and now that he's supposed to prove that he's been receiving therapy, his therapist runs away for a vacation. After Louis, AJ shares the story of how Max's wife destroyed his life, and now Max is still living in denial. Every woman reminds him of his ex-wife. Dagny shares that in her case, her fiancé is 12 years older than her. It's not an issue to her because he's everything she wants. However, she thinks that he's afraid their marriage will fail like his first marriage. Charlotte cuts Dagny's story short, assuming that her fiancé sent her to therapy, as it's typical of men. She shares that he reminds her of her third husband, who was a commercial pilot. Dagny continues the conversation. This time, she admits that she's jealous of everything when it comes to her fiancé, and that's because he wasn't faithful in his first marriage. Her fiancé started dating her even when he was still married to his ex-wife. Charlotte interrupts again, as Dagny's fiancé reminds her of her second husband, Donald, a dermatologist who had slept with someone else. Lindsay tries to make Dagny understand that any man who cheats with her is going to cheat on her. Monica interrupts her, reminding her that she will find any excuse just to evade a commitment. She accuses Lindsay of ending her relationship with a perfect guy like Steven simply because he asked her to be his wife. She has known Lindsay for 7 years, and in those years, she held her hand through 6 separations, and now she's tired of it. Lindsay reveals that she started therapy to find out why she's so afraid of commitment. She wants a real relationship that goes beyond romantic weekends, but she feels that nothing ever lasts. Max shares that he's been doing therapy since day 3, and this is the first time that he knows what he wants. He wants to move on and free his soul from anger. The rest of them begin to say what they want one after the other. Charlotte wants to stop running after men just to justify her existence. AJ would like to solve his problems with his blood-sucking mother. He tells them how had received a document from the adoption agency a week before his last session. He had waited 2 years to get the newspaper, and half of it is blacked out like some Iran CIA document. His situation has ruined every relationship he has had with every woman he has met. Even Monica advised that he quit calling women whores, as it might better help his relationship with women. Charlotte confesses that she's been in dozens of different groups, but this particular one is different. All of them reconsiders the decisions they've made so far, and they decide among themselves to make the most of their lives instead of wallowing in their pain and issues. Just when they least expect it, the cops burst into the apartment. They received a piece of information from Ralph stating that a robbery was taking place at Monica's address. After they gain their release, they follow Max to his mailbox in an attempt to encourage him to take the first step to move on. They cheer him until he's able to summon the courage to take off the tag bearing his and his ex-wife's name. AJ quickly brings out a new tag bearing Max's name. After the mailbox, Eve leads them to the buzzer, and Max's ex-wife's name is still on it. Max feels great taking off her name. It's the first time in 3 years that he feels he's in control. He yells as he narrates how Inga had decided on her own to end their marriage without a discussion or warning him prior. Max loses control of himself as everyone watches him talk about everything he's been bottling up. Charlotte pours him a drink and asks him to calm down. Lindsay is unable to hold back, so she runs out immediately. Monica runs after Lindsay, who is driven by guilt. She spills that every word Max used to describe his ex-wife perfectly describes her. Lindsay tells her to go back to Max as she needs to go home. As soon as Monica leaves, Lindsay receives a call from Dagny. Minutes later, she arrives at a pub where Dagny is crying and drowning herself in alcohol. She is panicking simply because she thinks her man must be cheating on her. She has left him 15 messages and several missed calls which he hasn't returned, so she believes it proves to her that he's having an affair. Lindsay tries to comfort her. She sends a message to Monica to come meet her at their current location. For a moment, she feels like she just made the worst decision by bringing all these people together. Thankfully, AJ walks into the pub just at the right time. Both of them help to encourage Dagny. AJ offers her some free advice on how to deal with her man, when she gets home instead of beginning another phase of quarrels with him. Before she gets on the cab, Dagny thanks them, confessing that she doesn't know what she would have done without them. AJ sees Lindsay back at her house. He wonders why she had to run out of Max's house like that. When they get to her doorstep, he requests to take her out to town. Lindsay obliges him, and they step out to a place where they can play some games. AJ starts up a conversation about her ex and her reasons for quitting relationships without a valid explanation. Her answers make him sarcastically say women are indeed blood-sucking whores. Lindsay doesn't like the way he sounds, so she starts walking away declaring she's going back home. He comes after her, apologizing, as he is simply trying to be humorous. He advises her to call Steven and give him some closure instead of just totally shutting him out without an explanation. She forgives him and teases him for giving her relationship advice when he's a mess when it comes to relationships. They spend most of the time discussing their family and how AJ's relationship with his birth mother has affected his relationship with women. Lindsay informs him that his story is even better, that he was given birth to and given out in adoption the same day. In her case, her mother passed when she was 4 and her dad remarried in the same year. She suggests he can have one of her stepmothers if he wants a mother so badly. After all, she has stepmother number 3 currently. They agree that it's amazing the way parents can mess with one's brain and drive them crazy. The following day, all of them meet up again, and this time Dagny comes in with all smiles on her face. She apologizes to everyone for all the sauce messages she sent to everyone's phone. She thanks them for the emotional support and advice because after doing what AJ advised, she had the best makeup course of her life. Max reveals that he thinks it's time for him to start dating again. He met an interior designer, and his newfound friends advised him to call her already and fix a date with her for next week. At Max's request, they all consent to accompanying him on his date if it will make him feel better. The day finally arrives, and the rest of the group comes to support Max. They sit a few tables away while he walks his date to where they will be sitting. During Max's date, his friends signal him on what to do to spice up the date. Eve feels uncomfortable with how it looks as though he's on a business date. She scribbles something down quickly and gives it to Roger, who is a waiter at the bar, so that will help her pass it to Max. Max's date notices that he's always looking at some people on the other side of the bar. Since he claims there's nothing to it, she tells him about a guy she went on a date with who brought his ex along with him. AJ, Monica, Lewis, and Lindsay are arguing amongst themselves as guys seem to care more about getting laid when they go on dates. Monica dares AJ to date girls from now until September without sex, and she suggests he start Lindsay. Roger gets on stage as an entertainer, and his show is quite boring. The rest of his friends stare in surprise at how he sucks up on stage. He soon starts talking about everything they shared among themselves during the therapy session. He takes the spotlight on Max and his date, telling everyone that they are on a first date, which most likely is a ploy to have intercourse with her all weekend. From the way his show is going, Max's date suspects that something is going on. She asks Max if he knows them, and he tells her that they are from his therapy group. She gets pissed and feels that she must be a magnet for crazy people. She picks up her bag and walks out angrily while he runs after her. He requests to call her, but she's uninterested in ever talking to him again. Lewis bursts into a fit of laughter. The next time they all come together at Monica's place, Charlotte fires at Roger for being a jerk at the bar the previous night. Monica informs everyone of AJ and Lindsay's relationship, which will span till September, and it's going to be without intimacy. Eve thinks it'll be the biggest challenge as Lindsay is one with a bad attitude, and AJ has problems with long relationships. Lindsay reminds Monica that she's just a bystander, and AJ agrees to take on the challenge. Their group meeting soon ends, and the duo walk down the path leading to Lindsay's house. AJ decides to give her a little preview, and he grabs her while they are walking towards her house. He leads her on in a quick romantic dance before continuing on their way. The following day, AJ and Lindsay meet up at a yoga class. Lindsay enjoys the session, but AJ seems to be finding the exercises difficult as he's sweating all over. After the session, they grab a drink on their way to a cafe nearby. She questions why he believes intercourse is simply going straight to the point in a relationship after which he'll move on. AJ reveals that whenever he blames his birth mother, everything he's doing makes sense to him, especially since he's not ready to take responsibility. He informs her that according to the social worker in charge of his adoption, his father wanted to marry his mother, but she refused. She chose to give him away by adoption rather than marry his father. The group meets up again and Dagny informs everyone that she's having an issue. The previous night, her fiancé Hank told her that he needed to hand over a contract to a client and then he would return home. It was a little past 9 o'clock, and she called to apologize, but his phone was turned off. Charlotte believes it sounds like something Harry would do. Her number 5 was a male stripper. Charlotte's response prompts everyone to look at her in surprise. Monica asks how many times she has been married. Charlotte reveals that she's in divorce number 6, and she always finds them in group therapy. Dagny continues her story about how Hank got home by 1:15 with the excuse that he'd been working the whole time. Louis spills that he didn't sleep at his house the previous night. He got home this morning to meet his pregnant wife, Trish, crying. He's worried that he doesn't know the kind of father he will turn out to be. Eve assures him that no matter what, he's going to turn out better than her child molester father. Her childhood was hell, but she turned out to become a normal adult. She doesn't intend to allow the rest of her life to get ruined by ancient history, and that's why she believes Louis will be a better father than her dad. The following day, Monica and Lindsay are working on a photo shoot session for a little girl. Lindsay's phone starts ringing. She picks up, and it's AJ scheduling a picnic with her. She informs Monica, who reveals that she's been going out on coffee dates with Max lately. Lindsay and AJ arrive at the picnic spot later in the day. Just before they properly settle in, a couple engaging in some deep, intimate display shows up close to them. They quickly grab their stuff to move away. A few moments later, they stop by a road store to get some ice creams, and Lindsay starts apologizing for ruining his picnic with her choice of location. Afterward, they decide to go watch the sunset elsewhere. AJ informs her that he took her advice to check out the medical history record. He found out that his birth mother's brother's name appears in the file as a contact person, just in case. He's quite happy that he has an uncle, even though he doesn't understand how his mother could just give him away. Lindsay comforts him, seeing that his mood has suddenly turned depressing. At their next meeting, Max shares that he has registered on some dating websites, and he's got a couple of responses. Louis, on the other hand, tells them that Trish moved out, and she's going to have the baby. However, she doesn't want to see him again. All of them start pouring in their advice, and Eve asks them not to bother because men don't change. Her words aren't pleasing to Terrence. He feels they are supposed to support each other, but she's doing the opposite. He gets into a little exchange of words with her, and in annoyance, he walks out of the room before he hits her. Eve picks up her bag and informs them that they are all deluding themselves because people don't change. Dagny gets pissed when she calls her relationship pathetic, and in a split second, she walks over to Eve about to start a fight. She knocks Eve to the ground, and a record falls out of her bag. Everyone is in shock to realize that Eve is taping them. She picks up her things and walks out on them after hauling more words. On the way home, Lindsay is still in shock that Eve used them. She questions if AJ hasn't noticed that Monica is crazy about Max. However, she thinks the feeling might be mutual. She suggests they do something to help the duo, but AJ stops her from interfering, and they soon start talking about other things. Max requests to take her out since it's Friday night. Then, he grabs her and kisses her lips lovingly. He requests they stop by his place and just make out, but she reminds him that the agreement is till September. He feels no one is going to know about it, but she still refuses him. Later that night, they stop by a bowling center, and the fun is massive. AJ suggests they stop at the Bowling Cuisine. He's been there, and their meals are great. Lindsay agrees and follows him there. She's trying out their order when she suddenly sees Steven, who is standing right behind AJ. Steven completely ignores AJ's presence and focuses on Lindsay. Their conversation happens to be a somewhat question and answer thing. He kisses Lindsay on her cheek before bidding her goodbye, and then getting on his way out. They get back to Lindsay's house much later. AJ observes that she's still in love with Steven, and she's conflicted. Lindsay gets up to walk into her house, and he confesses that from the very moment he saw her at the men's toilet, he knew she would turn his life upside down. He confesses his feelings for her, as he's certain what he feels for her is more than just a gamble. Lindsay meets with Steven the next day. They spend some time talking, and it's evident that Steven is still into her. Later that day, she calls Monica over to her house, so she can help her find shoes that she'll wear to dinner at Provence with Steven that night. Monica asks about her relationship with AJ because she feels both of them have a good thing going. Whatever the case may be, she just has to support her friend in whatever decision she's making. That evening, AJ stands outside Lindsay's house for some time before picking up the flower he got for her and making his way towards the building. Meanwhile, Lindsay is having quite a time on her romantic date with Steven, and she requests that he give her his best kiss right away. After the kiss, Lindsay informs him that she has every reason to be with him, as he's an amazing fellow. She's ready to take a risk, but their relationship doesn't feel like a risk. She thanks him and apologizes for disappointing him. She gives him one last kiss and leaves the restaurant. She gets back to meet AJ and reveals that she wants him and not Steven. Lindsay genuinely confesses her feelings for him. The duo gets wrapped in emotions, and in no time they start kissing passionately. She informs him that it's the first day of September. The duo smiles and continues kissing. 2 months later, AJ engaged Lindsay, and now she intends to set her friend up in a relationship. Lindsay meets up with Monica and informs her that she's been fixed for a blind date. Monica agrees to meet up with this person. She arrives at the location to meet Max. They discover that they've been fixed up on the date by their friends, as the description given to them is exactly what's in front of them. Lindsay and AJ stand outside watching the duo and smiling at each other. He grabs her for a kiss, and then they walk away, leaving their friends to enjoy their date. Their relationships get established after some time. The group therapy participants meet up for a reunion, and they are all excited to see each other. Dagny reveals to them that she has broken up with Hank. She believes he's probably fixing his secretary right now. She's happy that she didn't marry him. Louis and Tricia are back together. They attend the gathering with their newborn child. Everyone gathers around to welcome them. Louis turns out to be a greater dad than he expected himself to be.